Ladies and gentlemen, this is Capandball here, your favorite gun channel in beautiful, bright English language. And today I have a Henry rifle with me. It's a model 1860 Henry rifle from the American Civil War. Of course, it's not an original, but an Uberti repro, but I love that gun. I made my first video about the Henry rifle about 10 years ago. By that time I did not have my own rifle, but now I have it. I bought one because you can live without a Henry, but why should you? Today there are two Henry repros on the market, both are fine arms, but mine is an Uberti, and I have three good reasons why I chose the Uberti. The first one is, I think it looks a bit more authentic, because of the finish probably. Second, their 4440 bores are tech drivers. I know it because I have been shooting the Uberti 1873 Winchester in that caliber for 15 years now, and I know that it can deliver excellent accuracy. And third, the Uberti is much cheaper, which is also a very important factor for me. So let's revisit the Uberti repro. And I'm not going to repeat the story of the development which I did 10 years ago, but I'm going to focus on quite interesting topics. This will be the following. So first of all, I will dedicate quite a good time to the 44 Henry rimfire cartridge. The new repros are chambered for the 4440 cartridge or for the 45 long coat cartridge, which are not original cartridges. So I'm going to show my respect to the old cartridge by telling a bit about its history. Second, I will talk about the US and Confederate procurement of Henry rifles during the American Civil War. Third, I will talk about the tactical advantages using a repeating rifle in the world of the muzzle loaders. And fourth, I will give you my thoughts about why the entire Union Army was not armed with the Henry rifle. And while I talk a lot, I will also shoot a lot, because this year I'm planning to shoot this rifle to 500 yards distance, meaning that I will have to develop the load. Of course, I don't have to develop it because I already developed that load for my 4440 Winchester. It's a black powder cartridge, of course, so I will show you how I make those cartridges. You will see two ways to make those cartridges. And of course, you will see how this rifle performs at 50, 100, 200 and 300 meters first. But before we continue, let me thank you for your support. Your donations through Patreon are vital for keeping the quality of the channel high. Remember that we are also present on History of Weapons and War platform. On these two platforms you can frequently find exclusive content that you don't find on YouTube, so please become a patron of the Capandball YouTube channel. The Uberti repro I have is chambered for the 4440 round, so it is not rimfire. The magazine holds 13 rounds, plus you can insert one in the chamber, making the rifle a 14-shooter. The barrel is 24 inch long. It has 6 grooves, turning one complete turn in 20 inch distance. Let's talk first about the rimfire cartridges, the 44 Henry rimfire cartridge. Well, the rimfire concept already existed when the Volcanic Repeating Arms Company was still manufacturing their guns for the rocket ball. Now, this rocket ball was a self-contained cartridge, meaning it was a ball, it was powder, and it was priming compound. But the actual case of this cartridge was the cavity in the base of the bullet, which means that the powder charge was quite limited. It was a weak cartridge. Louis Nicolas Flaubert patented his cartridge in 1845, and by that time metallic cartridges were already known. In fact, from the 16th century there were breech-loading guns that were using metallic cartridges, but they contained only the powder and the ball, and the priming was done externally with match or with flint or with anything else. By that time another self-contained cartridge design was also on the market, which was the Le Fauché system, which is the pinfire system. Well, this was good for revolving actions, but In fact, it was not really good for any kind of repeating action because the pin was protruding from the side of the cartridge, which means that it was very hard to make any kind of repeating system that could feed those cartridges. The Flober system seemed much more suitable for repeating arms. In this case, the cartridge was drawn from copper or from brass, and the priming compound was in the base of the cartridge and also in the rim of the cartridge, all around the rim of the cartridge. Now, these cartridges contained only the primer, the priming compound, and the bullet, so there was no powder charge in it because they were parlor guns, designed for parlor guns, meaning they were indoor shooting systems. The priming compound was applied to the cartridge in liquid state, so it was poured into the bottom of the cartridge case where it hardened. The system found its way very fast to the US. Horace Smith and Daniel Wesson, who were also both associated with the perfection of the lever-action rifle concept in volcanic arms, they designed a 7-shot revolver for that cartridge, but they increased the strength of the cartridge by adding 2.5 grains of black powder. Patent 11496 described a new way of adding the priming compound to the case. The percussion pellet or priming compound was placed in the case and covered with a perforated metal disc. As the primer completely filled the base of the cartridge and was completely covered with the disc, the cartridge case could be struck anywhere on the head, not just on the rim. An industrialized method was developed for making these cartridges. They were drawn from copper discs, just as the primers were done that way. And also the head and the rim of the cartridge was created during this drawing process. This rim had three purposes. First, it prevented the cartridge entering the chamber further than it had to stop. Second, it helped the extractation of the cartridge. Third, the rim contained the fulminate in the inside, of course, in the recess. The perfection of the rimfire cartridge is associated with Benjamin Tyler Henry, the father of the Henry rifle. Now, he was born in 1821 in Claremont, and he gathered valuable experience, gunsmithing experience in various companies, like Springfield Armory, for example. But in the early 1850s, he was working for Robinson Lawrence. Now, Robinson Lawrence was involved in making the volcanic Jennings rifles, and by that time, Horace Smith and Daniel Wesson was also working for that company. Patent 10535 claimed the repeating system activated by moving the trigger guard lever that automatically fed the cartridges into the chamber while also cocked the hammer simultaneously. The patent also claimed the extractor system. But the rimfire concept by that time was not really popular in America, so the volcanic rifle was still firing that weak rocket ball. Up until 1859, when one of the shareholders, Oliver Winchester, reorganized the company. The rocket ball was patented by Walter Hunt in 1848. The patent claimed that the bullet created with swaging has a recess in the back to be filled with powder. It was closed with a metal cap with a touch hole in the middle, meaning that the original system was designed for externally capped breech loaders. This system was later improved with filling this touch hole with priming compound. Winchester hired Henry to be the superintendent of the company, and Henry understood that the key limitation of the system is the rocket ball itself that had to be changed, and the rimfire mechanism was on hand. He perfected the method the cartridges were drawn, the cartridge cases were drawn, and also perfected the method as the priming compound is applied to the base of the bullet. By the time the priming compound completely filled the base of the rimfire cartridges, it was not just in the rims, but on the complete base. It was applied in a fluid state, it hardened, then the powder was added, and then the ball. Now, this is a problem, because in 1859 he had an accident with his rifle. When he was loading the magazine, the cartridges in the magazine went off, so he had a magazine explosion. This is why we have this opening on the bottom of the Henry rifles, the magazines of the Henry rifles, so the pressure can leave. And this is why we never throw the bullets into the magazine, but we hold the rifle in a slight angle and let them slowly slide into their places. And this is why we never slam the follower on top of the cartridges, but we follow the follower with hand and just place them on top of the cartridges so they don't fire. This is quite important safety regulations for a Henry rifle that we have to keep even today. So he changed that method. He applied the priming compound only into the rim by spinning the cases. The compound base was made thicker, not liquid, but it was made thicker with ground glass. And also it was spinned around the recess of the rim, so at the bottom of the cartridge case there was no priming compound. And this completely eliminated the problem of magazine explosion. At least this is what he said. Of course it did not. Let's check it. So that group is perfect. I knew it because I have been shooting the 1873 Uberti Winchester rifle for many years now with black powder cartridges. So I had time to experiment with the different loads. So this is 30 grains of 3S Swiss powder plus the lineman bullet that I mentioned to you before. And we have 5 shots within the size of, let's say, a bit bigger than the 10 group, but all the 4 shots are well within the size of the 10 group, which means that it's perfect. Let's check the 100 meter. Henry received the patent protection for his rifle in 1860 October, just before the breakout of the American Civil War. So Oliver Winchester led New Haven Arms Company. The new company had finally a rifle that was capable of delivering tremendous firepower compared to the muzzle loaders. So the company ceased the production of the volcanic rifles and started focusing on their Henry rifles. Henry made several very important modifications to the original system. He kept the toggle link system, he kept the lift, the elevator, he kept the tube magazine. So the basic elements were the same, but there were minor modifications on the system that made it reliable, because that was important. A military arm had to be reliable. For example, the firing pin was actually 2 firing pins on the bolt head, which means that each case was struck at 2 places, so to eliminate the misfires. Henry's patent covered not just the improvements to the volcanic design, but also the rimfire cartridge holding enough powder and lead to incapacitate an enemy soldier up to several hundred yards. The first 200 to 275 Henrys were made with iron frames. Their exact number is not known, so today they are extremely rare. The New Haven Arms Company also tooled up for the production of the cartridges. They purchased the mercury fulminate, the priming compound, for Charles A. Cole from Springfield in 20-pound batches. Now 20 pound was enough for, let's say, 70,000 cartridges. The powder was purchased from A.J. Fay, Potter and Tallman in Boston. Now the powder that they used for charging the cases was a fine pistol powder. It was designated number 2 pistol powder. I don't exactly know the cone size of this powder, but it must have been close to the 3F granulation. The cases were manufactured in the New Haven Arms Company, but the blanks were purchased from Brown & Brothers. The bullet was a grooveless heeled bullet of 4.46-inch diameter, heavily raw-crimped into the case mouth. The cartridge submitted for the official US Army test in 1861-62 contained 25 grains of this fine pistol powder, a 216 grain weighing bullet. It was a flat bullet, which means that there were no grease grooves on it. It was immersed in molten tallow as lubrication, and it also contained 2 grains of mercury fulminate as a priming compound. Now, this was producing around 1,100 feet per secondum muzzle velocity, which is not too fast, but within the contemporary tactical distances, this is good. There were 2 types of projectiles in service during the American Civil War. The first one, the original bullet, was a pointed bullet, but in 1864 it was changed to a flat-nosed bullet to save the magazine from explosions. Winchester and Henry understood that these cartridges are very weak compared to the contemporary rifle cartridges, the muzzle-loading rifle cartridges. So in 1863 they suggested to increase the powder charge of the cartridge to 30 grains and the bullet weight to 240 grains. Well, this never happened actually. An even stronger cartridge was tested in 1864 at the Washington Arsenal. It was containing 36 grains of powder and a 324 grain bullet, so it was quite a powerful cartridge compared to what I use today. But as these trials were complete failure for the Henry rifle, this change also never happened. The introduction of the rimfire metallic case cartridges also meant great change in the cartridge manufacturing, because you can roll paper cartridges with children without any problem. But to make rimfire cartridges, you need machinery, and that's a great change. It was a real bottleneck in cartridge productions during the American Civil War. Reloading could be a solution for easing the dependence from the logistic lines. And even if we don't really like to reload rimfire cartridges today, it is not impossible. In fact, Native Americans reloaded the rimfire cartridges with soaking the heads of the matches off and using that compound and applying it to the recess in the rim. On the battlefield of Little Bighorn, there are several cartridge cases found that has multiply indents on the back, which means that probably they were reloaded cases, or they were misfiring cartridges that were tried again with a different position in the chamber. Let's run some cartridges for the Uberti Henry using a 19th century ideal tool. This handy little item incorporates all the necessary tools you will need to refill your spent cases, including the bullet mold. Unfortunately, the bullet diameter provided by this mold does not exactly fit the modern 4440 bores, so I'm casting you a bullet just for the demonstration. I'll use a 240 grain lineman bullet instead, sized to .427. and doped with a mix of tallow, beeswax and synthetic engine oil. The process starts with melting the lead and preheating the mold. The mold is a big chunk of iron, so this will take a few minutes. This tool is so ingenious that it also features a bullet sizer. Unfortunately, the original decapping pin is missing from the tool, but the 4440 Lee case trimmer gauge is a perfect substitute. So let's unprime the cases. While doing this, the case neck is also resized. Now it's time to reprime the cases. The powder charges 30 grains of 3F Swiss powder. Some shaking will help the powder settle evenly. And the last phase is to seat the bullet. And there we go. Your beautiful 4440 rounds are ready. The original Henry cartridge went through several improvements after the war and remained in production up until the first decades of the 20th century. The most important modification was patented by George R. Stetson in 1871. Stetson modified the way the bullet was secured in the case mouth. His bullet was swaged from a lead slug and featured the heel and the shoulder that rested against the case mouth. The fit of the projectile was so snug that it did not need raw crimping. This increased accuracy. The case length was also increased as the 200 grain flat-nose bullet was shorter, allowing more space for the powder charge. The overall length of the cartridge, however, could not be increased due to the limits of the carrier. These cartridges are often called 44 Henry long, but in fact they are the same cartridges as the original ones. It's the same chambering. So this was the first part, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, comment, switch on notifications. Please be our supporter on Patreon or on History of Weapons and War platform. Up until next time, stay cool and keep your powder dry.